Welcome back to the War Room. It's Friday, June the 5th, the year of our Lord 2020, broadcasting live on America's Voice.news in all of your podcast platforms, on Newsmax TV, on G News, blown through the Chinese firewalls, subtitled in Mandarin, to reach the ordinary Chinese people yearning to be free with the news and information that they are not regularly allowed to see. Stephen K. Bannon still on assignment. Jason Miller still in recovery. So you got Greg Manns, Raheem Kassam, and now Harlan Hill in the studio here on Capitol Hill. You going to call your son Capitol, by the way?
It might happen. It's in the running.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, the other part of this as well is you, the audience out there, and returning to normality for you guys. We're obviously incredibly grateful for everything that you've done to make this show one of the biggest shows out there, one of the fastest growing shows out there, nearly 10 million total downloads on this, so many million views across all the different platforms as well. And for you, those of you getting back to work or trying to reopen your businesses, make sure you check out netsuite.com/Bannon. If you're going to succeed when the economy comes roaring back, as we've seen the major indications of this morning, massive, unexpected jobs numbers this morning, all the experts wrong, but you can be ahead of the curve. Get NetSuite by Oracle, the world's #1 cloud business system. You can get a free guide at netsuite.com/Bannon. Right. I believe, and I hope we have Raynard Jackson on the line joining us now. Raynard, are you with us?
Yes, Raheem, I'm here.
Hey, Raynard, it's so great to have you on. Thank you. I know it's been an interesting morning trying to line all the guests up, given the new jobs numbers and everything like that. I like doing these live shows and being the conductor of all of the madness in and all of these things, but it sometimes can be quite difficult lining up the guests. So we're really grateful for you being flexible with us, Raynard. You obviously have spent your whole life working within the black community, working for conservative causes as well, and I know that those two things don't necessarily always seem like they go hand in hand. But I think if this president has shown us anything, they're certainly not diametric opposites. Why don't you please, firstly, talk us through your reactions to everything that we've seen the last 10 days all across the country, from the moment that George Floyd horrendous video came out to where we are today.
Yeah, well, Raheem, thank you for having me on the show. I think this Floyd situation presents a great opportunity, especially for conservatives, to finally have a head-on discussion about race in America. And you said I'm black, Raheem, but I'm conditionally black because Joe Biden hasn't certified me as being black yet, so I'm waiting to see if that paperwork goes through and is approved by Biden. So,
hey, by the way, when you get the paperwork, can you frame it, put it behind you on the screen there? Your certificate of blackness from Joe Biden.
No question.
Yeah.
No question. And as you know, Raheem, I'm from St. Louis, and so race has been the front and center of St. Louis all of my adult life, and even as a kid. And so the problem I have with conservatives, Raheem, is we are totally incompetent when it comes to effective communications directly to the black community. And so I want to see people like Bob Woodson, Bob Brown. I want to see Herman Cain, John Sibley Butler. We have a lot of blacks that are on our side who have supreme credibility, Raheem, within the black community and party credentials, but I don't see them anywhere. I encourage the White House strongly to find these credible black conservatives. We don't need any Diamond and Silks and Candace Owens. We need people who have credibility in the black community. And I think there is a great conversation to be had on how we move forward by way of policy, Raheem, because again, to be honest with you, what happened to Floyd is not a partisan political issue, but listen, this is an indictment of liberalism in Baltimore with Freddie Gray, Eric Garner up in New York City, Minneapolis with Floyd, St. Louis, where I'm from. All these cities have been run by liberal Democratic mayors for 50 years plus, and none of the issues in these cities have ever gotten any better. Conservatives, let's take our message directly into these communities.
Powerful, powerful. Now, if you were to tell the president, what should he do? Should he set up a committee to study this? Should he get a group of powerful African American conservatives together, or how can he get this message out?
Well, forget about committee because, Jack, as you guys know, being in D.C., whenever you don't have an answer for something and you're trying to buy time, set up a committee that will take 2 or 3 years to come up with a conclusion that nobody will ever read the final report. What this president needs to do right now is, and I've sent emails over to various friends in the White House, these credible blacks I'm talking about, Jack, they're nowhere engaged with the White House. This White House spends more time talking with Al Sharpton, the NAACP, the Urban League, than they do with black conservatives like Bob Woods and Herman Cain. And I just sent an email to 2 good friends of mine. They would be perfect to have a private conversation with the president. James Brown, the sportscaster, and Coach Tony Dungy. These are 2 guys who also have supreme respect in the black community, and they are the moral conscience of the black community, and no one's reaching out to them.
Yeah, I thought Coach Dungy was very courageous last night when he kind of came out in defense of Breeze, not in terms of the subject, but he said no one should ever be ashamed for supporting the American flag, and I thought that was really a beautiful thing that he said.
Matter of fact, Jackie, I'm hoping to have a conversation with Drew Brees over the weekend because, number one, what he said nothing that was wrong or inappropriate. And here's what nobody talks about, Jack and Raheem. When you see these NFL and NBA athletes, they all are promoting a liberal agenda. Where is Ben Watson, a conservative black that played with the New England Patriots? He's doing a documentary on his pro-life beliefs. Why has the NFL never funded any conservative group with all this $100 million pot of money they put together? They all support liberal causes, and no one is calling them on the carpet. They don't give to conservative groups. And so what Drew Brees found out, I ran into, Drew Brees, I guarantee you, has not spent any time talking with any black conservatives, even within the NFL. There are tons of them out there, but they never get the exposure in the media because the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, pro hockey, they've all made a conscious decision to promote liberal agendas at the expense of conservatives.
And we're speaking with Raynard Jackson. He's the founder and chairman of Black Americans for a Better Future. Jack?
So, Raynard, one question. When do you think we see Dave Chappelle do a stand-up routine on Drew Brees and Kevin Hart?
Well, yeah, that's fun. Now, I have more faith and confidence in Chappelle because Chappelle will speak his mind. And when he came up with his Netflix special and talked about the alphabet people, the LTBG, ABCDEFG group, he took a lot of heat, but he said, hey, they are out of line. You're not going to tell me what I should believe and who I should accept. And Kevin Hart, listen, after he groveled in front of the folks trying to get the MC job with the Academy Award, I've lost all respect for him. I will never go support anything he does because what Kevin Hart said in his past about not supporting homosexuality, that's what his true beliefs are. But he is too afraid to stand up for his true belief. And again, Jack, this is where if conservatives will reach out to black conservatives who have credibility, there's a story to be had there. And we don't need to be convinced to be conservative. We don't need to be persuaded. We just need to be invited to be a part of the team. I'm telling you what I know. I've been black most of my life.
Until very recently when Joe Biden applied those conditions. But you have to connect a lot of these dots here as well. I mean, these Hollywood types who want the money from the big studios. The big studios are getting the Chinese money to do this stuff. The Chinese money supports the cultural Marxist program in the United States because they know it divides people. And I want to get into this with you as well, talking about division within the black community as well, Raynard. But from what I can tell, I have expertise in Antifa back in Europe, but from what I can tell, there is a wedge being driven right now by illiberal leftists, the Antifa types, who want to drive a wedge through this country and also want to drive a wedge through black communities who want to leverage what is reasonable and rational, people who find treatment of George Floyd appalling And I really want to understand your take on that. I mean, how do these communities get to grips with the fact that in a lot of cases they're not just being used, they're also being put on the front lines by these illiberal Antifa types who are handing out bricks and dropping pallets of things around and saying, hey, you know, if you just flip over this car or toss this brick through that window, and then they run off. And who has to deal with it? The black communities.
Yep. I don't know if you all saw the video clip last night of the black woman in Brooklyn whose business was destroyed by the rioters. If you all haven't pulled that clip, it was powerful. We conservatives should be running up to Brooklyn right now, raising private dollars to help her get opened up again. But Raheem, here's the problem. And again, I'm very critical of conservatives and their lack of substantive communication with the black community. I'm from St. Louis. I've been working with several of my pastor friends as we speak with the U.S. Attorney back in St. Louis, a Republican appointee, who are with us on all these issues of crime, law enforcement. But again, the CNNs and the MSNBC are not going to put these guys who are doing yeoman's work on the local level. They're not going to put them on TV. It's up to us, Raheem and Jack. Why don't we get this TV network to allow us to do a town hall meeting here in D.C. or in St. Louis? Let's bring out the local community who are with us, who don't buy into that liberal orthodoxy, but they don't have the platform because CNN and MSNBC are not going to showcase. And be honest with you, not even Fox News, because Fox News are too busy being promoting the buffoonery, the diamond and silk and the Candace Owens. We need substantive blacks who have credibility in the community, and they're all over the place, but we conservatives never give them a platform.
I love the idea of the town hall. In fact, if the America's Voice leadership is listening right now, I'm going to put you in touch with Raynard Jackson. Maybe you can bring together that town hall. Raynard, just tell our audience where they can. We've got a hard break coming up. Tell our audience where they can find more of your work.
Yeah, they can go to our educational fund, Black Americans for a Better Future.org with that, and our Twitter handle is BAFBFDC.org, BAFBFDC.org, or just go to Raynard Jackson and Google me. All my social media and all our emails and websites will pop up.
Thank you so much,
thank
Raynard.
you so much, man.
Absolute pleasure, as always, to have you on the show. I'm going to connect you with the America's Voice guys immediately after this show, and hopefully we can pull something together here. I'm down to be a part of it as well in any way that I can help. Let's go back to the live stream here. The Vice President Mike Pence is up there right now. I just want to see, right before we go to the break, what Mike Pence is saying. Can we take this live stream, guys?
As you directed the White House Coronavirus Task Force, they're also a tribute to the fact that states across the country, now all 50 states, are reopening our country. Even before we came to the end of the 45 days, you directed us to give guidance to state governors and all the states and territories to safely and responsibly reopen. And now all of our states are in the process of doing that. It's remarkable to think that 2.5 million jobs and declining unemployment number actually dates to surveys done in mid-May. Mr. President, it's remarkable that we can see all across the country that that this is a snapshot today of the comeback that was taking place the better part of a month ago. But because of the guidance you gave to the American people in mitigation, and because of the recovery efforts that bipartisan Congress supported at your direction.
We'll come back to this after this break. This is War Room Pandemic. # War Room Pandemic. Back in a moment with Greg Mans, Jack Maxey, Harlan Hill, Raheem Kassam, Mike Pence, Donald Trump, the whole team. Be with you in a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
When the spending starts, the mending starts. We are in a position this morning here on the War Room. We threw the entire clock out. I have to make way for the best economic voices. Had Larry Lindsay on in the first hour, and we're hoping to have Jason Trennert on too. Raynard Jackson just joining us a moment ago. Bill Gertz as well. So many things going on. Unfortunately, we couldn't connect with General Spaulding, who we were hoping to have on the program. Hill in studio. Harlan's the author of They're Not Listening. You've seen Ryan Gudersky on the show as well, co-authored this book, How the Elites Created the Nationalist Populist Revolution. Harlan, Jack, Greg, I want to go around the horn with you guys on this right now, because you've got on the cover of this book, you've got the MAGA hat, the Brexit button, the gilet jaune, the French yellow vest. This was an international populist revolution. Yeah. But we're seeing a revolution out on the streets now as well. Are we guilty, Harlan, of our own accusations that we hurl over at the other side? Should we be listening more? What is going on out here? And in the break, you talked about when we had Raynard Jackson on, the frustration that actually nobody's getting into hyper specifics about what actually these protesters want at the end of the day.
Well, I think that we have opposite problems. This populist movement on the right versus this rebellion that we're seeing on the left. They're very well organized, but they haven't been able to articulate what they want. We're very poorly organized, but we very clearly articulated what we want. One of my biggest concerns with what we've seen happen over the last week is that the only constructive criticism that has been offered by Black Lives Matter is that they want us to disavow our country, that they want us to kneel before African Americans indiscriminately, that they want us to basically bend and be bullied by Marxists. And what I want to hear from people like Raynard is, what is the conservative African Americans' plan to actually solve the real concerns of the African American community in this country? I know that there are problems that the community wants to have addressed, and I know that people like Raynard need to have a seat at the table. But start to articulate now, what is it that we want? How do we move forward in some sort of constructive manner that doesn't result in senseless looting and the shutdown of a major American city? We'll
come back to that in just a second. We have Jason Trennert joining us on the line now, founder, managing partner, and chief investment strategist of Strategas Securities. Jason, thanks for joining us on a late notice on war and pandemic this morning. We have Jason Trennert.
No. Yep, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. We have you now. Jason, thanks for joining us. Jason,
yes, sir.
Let's talk about these numbers coming out this morning. Firstly and foremost, as I asked Larry Lindsay in the first hour, how did everybody get this so wrong? And then secondly, as a corollary to that, tell us specifically, are these as good as they seem? And what does this portend for the immediate future?
Yeah, so I think the first question is a little harder than the second one. So the first one is, I don't know how everyone got this so wrong. I think part of it is driven by the fact that this is such an enormous experiment in terms of locking the entire economy down, that the system is not particularly well suited to keeping track of, let's say, 30 million people applying for 40 million people applying for unemployment claims in 2 months. So part of it is just a data collection issue. Part of it also is it's driven by a survey, the unemployment rate. So part of it is driven by how people describe their own job status. And so that's another, I think, confounding factor, whereas to say some people believe that they're temporarily laid off, but that they're going to get their job back, and others, just think that they're laid off. So there's a little bit of I think it's going to take a couple of months to kind of sort this out to where we are. The second question would be, what does this portend for the future? I would say the very good news with the economy's opening back up again, a lot of people who lost their jobs are returning back to work. I think longer term, there's been real damage that's been done to small businesses that is going to take a long time to repair. And I think also larger businesses in many instances have not laid anyone off yet.
Jason, Jack Maxey here. We had Lindsay on earlier, and he said that the American families have an extra $460 billion in their bank accounts because of the stimulus over the last couple months. How do you see that being used? I mean, do you see that going back into the equities market? You see construction booming? I mean, because that's a heck of a lot of money.
Yeah, so I think the first question is, I don't know how everyone got this so wrong. I think part of it is driven by the fact that this is such an enormous experiment in terms of locking the entire economy down, that the system is not particularly well suited to keeping track of, let's say, 30 million people applying for 40 million people applying for unemployment claims in 2 months. So part of it is just a data collection issue. Part of it also is it's a heck of a lot of money, especially in a relatively to be used in a relatively short amount of time. And I think the tricky part, I think, for investors and all of us is that amount of money is going to make everything look, to use an economist term, look like a V-shaped recovery in the next 3 or 4 months. The trick, if you're a free market person like myself, is that what do you do for an encore, or do you have to continue to stimulate the economy artificially to keep economic activity the same? And that may very well be what is done. I would argue it's not a particularly efficient way of going about allocating capital, and creates other distortions. But I do think it's clearly lessening the pain right now.
Jason, the president has just concluded his remarks in the Rose Garden. Obviously, a hot day here in Washington, D.C. They were up there for about an hour talking about all of this, talking about the recovery from the pandemic, talking about the protests going on all across the United States, and obviously where we go from here. Larry Hassett saying this is a historic day, Kevin Hassett saying this is a historic day, but there's still a lot of work left to do. Just picking up on some of your previous points as well. What in terms do you see? Is there more? Is there more that the government needs to step in to do here, or is it actually government getting out of the way here? You talked about you being a free market person. I don't mean to make you repeat yourself, but just explain to us now, because we've obviously seen and lumped so much debt on top of what we already had here. Should we be now trying to, the one thing I'm saying is, when the spending starts, the mending starts, encouraging people to go out there, if they have the disposable income, to spend, to get the economy back going? Is that the predominant way as well that the president can succeed in November? It is an election year, so everything has electoral consequences. I want to get your sort of vibe on how the politics plays in here.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and I would certainly the president has an ability to jawbone people who have the means to spend money, which would help out their fellow citizens, especially small businesses who don't have permanent capital or might not have access to the capital markets. Having said that, I really do believe, and there's a fair amount of history to support this, that recessions generally tend to mend themselves best when the government kind of steps out of the way. Now, this is very different because I would argue the government caused this recession by forcing everyone to shut down. So it seems only reasonable that they would indemnify people for that decision. By the same token, I get very fearful in terms of just looking at President Trump versus Vice President Biden. What scares me is that I think the Biden camp would be focused very much more on paying the deficits back quickly, either through increasing corporate taxes or more intervention or more quote-unquote help. The Trump administration is more focused on, I would argue, cutting taxes here, cutting the payroll tax, cutting long-term capital gains. In my opinion, that has a much better chance of helping the economy heal itself. And I historically, in 1920-21, there was a very deep depression, but largely Harding let it go, and it solved itself. In the 30s, as we know, both Hoover and FDR tried to get a lot of social justice gains at the same time they were trying to seek an economic recovery. In my opinion, that's one of the reasons why the misery lasted for 12 years.
Jason, just before we let you go, I wanted to get your thoughts on what we're seeing socially and culturally out there as well. It's obviously affecting businesses that can be open. Harlan Hill's in the studio with us right now. He's been talking about, at least in downtown D.C., we know in Midtown Manhattan, everything boarded up. Can you give us an idea of how long we expect that to last and what you're hearing?
Well, one of the things that I have office space in both New York City and Washington, D.C., my company, and I have to say, this is not these. First of all, I don't think there's been enough talk about how some of the protests are related to the shutdown, which and it's hard to draw a straight line between those things. But there's no doubt in my mind that there's some relation between the two. As horrific as what happened to Mr. Floyd is, it's hard to keep people cooped up for 3 months and not expect there to be some problems. I would also argue that from an economic perspective, this is a bad development, certainly for commercial real estate, because first of all, you've just taught a lot of people like myself that white-collar workers can work from home pretty easily and pretty productively, so they might not need office space in big metropolitan centers. And then if you add on top of that some of the things you've seen on television the last week, there may be a lot of people who don't want to come back to those metropolitan centers. So these are two bad developments, I think, that's happening, particularly for commercial real estate. And it would be a change in the way people work and look at their lives.
It's such a great point. Jason, where can the audience get more from you?
Well, our company is Strategas Research Partners, Trennert at strategasrp.com, and we're easily findable on the web. Thanks for the time.
Absolutely, thank you for the time, Jason Trennert. Fantastic analysis there. Get your house in order as the economy comes roaring back, and we need all the better voices, financial voices, economic voices, cultural voices, political voices. We're going to have more from Harlan Hill, Jack Maxey, Greg Manns, and I might speak a little after the break. War and Pandemic. Be right back.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room. It was 1829 that Sir Robert Peel established what we first think of as a modern policing force, the London Metropolitan Police. Policing is under question now. And the latest news coming out of, I think, Minnesota is that the Minneapolis City Council is considering disbanding their police department. I have no idea what they claim to want to replace it with. They're talking about a community trust or something like this. But let's get into that in this segment of the show, gentlemen. The idea that you would replace, I think the Minneapolis police was first set up in 1867. Mm-hmm. The idea that you would throw this out, this entire institution with all the institutional knowledge, with everything that it has achieved and done and can do in the future over an incident that I think we all agree and nobody disagrees was horrific and has indeed, brought much of the country to its knees. Is this the time to be thinking of scrapping policing?
Well, it's absurd in the face of these riots that we're going to actually start defunding police departments, or at least drawing back investment in police departments. In Minneapolis in particular, all 9 members of the city council, one of which I know personally from my former life as a Democrat, have signaled that they're willing to scrap the police department entirely. And they're basically going to replace it with some form of law enforcement, but a lot of social workers. It's just a liberal fantasy that's not going to pan out. And it'll actually be a nice petri dish that we can point to and say, hey, this is what happens. You have lawless, ungoverned communities. And I think that what's inevitable is that what will fill that void is, gangs, organized crime, and vigilantes. And I don't think any American wants to live in a country with that sort of unchecked power.
Back. Let me play devil's advocate just because somebody has to hear.
Yeah.
The Peelian principles in 1829 when London Metropolitan Police was founded, the second principle is to recognize always that the power of the police to fulfill their functions and duties is dependent on public approval of their existence, actions, and behavior, and on their ability to secure and maintain public respect.
They enjoy that, actually. Even if you look at the African-American community, there was a Pew poll that ran in 2016, which was actually at the height of African-American unarmed deaths at the hands of police. The approval rating amongst African-Americans of the police was 55%. So
is that the case now in Minneapolis?
I don't know if that's the case in Minneapolis. I don't think that polling exists. But beyond that, it's not just Minneapolis. It's also Los Angeles. The Garcetti came out last night and said that they're going to defund parts of their police department. And in New York, de Blasio has said that he'll do the same.
Here's something that everybody forgets about the police department, law enforcement, fire departments, the U.S. military. That was part of it. It is a wonderful place for people from backgrounds that are modest backgrounds, minority backgrounds, you name it, to go and succeed. So the police department in Minneapolis lifts people up out of poverty, takes people from the neighborhoods, puts them back on the street inside their own neighborhoods. I can't even imagine what an idiotic idea it would be simply just to remove that avenue for success from our minority and urban communities. Let's forget about the chaos it's going to cost. How can we not recognize the fact? For example, Captain Dorn. Captain Dorn rose himself out of poverty, become a captain in the St. Louis police force. And numerous of his other peers said that because of his example, they took the leap and also got out of poverty by joining the police force. I don't understand why we have all of a sudden turned these people who are members of our community into our enemies. It's as if one day somebody decided that every barista at Starbucks is a member of Antifa, and therefore we should never drink at Starbucks again. Hey, wait a second. That might be a good idea.
Greg.
So the other day I mentioned the admirable aspects of being a police officer, and in a family setting, a social setting, at the community level. Well, something that happened recently was Legos discontinued their police toy set. Now, that's a societal shift that's happening right in front of our eyes, and I think we need to push back on that and make it that admirable profession that it really is.
War room to any entrepreneurs out there watching. There is going to be a vacuum in the market for police branded toys out there. So if anybody wants to, in fact, Harlan, I think maybe you and I should launch a line. We could.
We're gonna launch a line of toys.
Yeah, why not? I mean,
An interesting way to also look at this is think about doctors, right? Doctors kill hundreds of thousands of people a year through negligence.
Yep.
Okay? Some doctors are bad doctors, bad actors. In fact, if you look at doctors, the majority of doctors who get sued for malpractice are the same group over and over again. But we don't talk about let's get rid of medicine, let's get rid of doctors because there's some bad actors. Let's get rid of the bad actors. Let's prosecute them. Let's put them in jail. And if I were in Minneapolis and I was that crazy hipster mayor, instead of scrapping the police department, I'd be finding ways to get youth from that community that is in pain into the police department so that they can police their own neighborhoods and show their community what they can be if they work together.
But what do you think? I mean, I didn't hear any necessary rebuttal to the point about the principles of policing. If it can be shown that the police have lost the public trust in a significant way, and that polling lasts, how can you continue to ethically service in that locality just as a continuation?
One, that hasn't been proved yet
Sure,
with data.
I'm saying if.
But okay, yeah, that's the first one. And second, that doesn't prove that we shouldn't have law enforcement. It is just that the current structure of the department isn't responsive to the community.
What do you think is really behind this? I mean, do they really want lawlessness?
Yes, that's the objective of the Antifa movement, right? They're going to turn this whole country into little localized armed groups defending their little turf with no property ownership, no nothing. These people are a greater threat to this country than the virus ever was because they're going to stay with us. And we have to target them. We have to shame them. We cannot employ these people. The same way they go after the right, the same way they go after Drew Brees or anybody else who walks off the reservation. And in terms of their point of view, we have to start targeting these people who are in education, these people who are employed by public companies. We want to find out who they are because these people are destroying America, and they certainly shouldn't be on the payroll of a public company or working in an elementary school, as far as I'm concerned.
I want to drill down into that. It's such an important point. Tell us more. How are we going to, how does that situation work? Is it do you have to have marched with the black bloc to be a target? Do you have to have posted Antifa-friendly stuff on the internet? Well, I mean, where is the line?
Listen, I go after actions, right? 4 days ago, 2 attorneys in New York City, one was Princeton educated, tried to set police cars on fire with Molotov cocktails. One of Obama's NSC staffers apparently bailed out her best friend who was one of these people, an attorney throwing firebombs. These people have infected every single institution. Okay, we need to go after them. We need to target them. We need to consider them the criminals that they are. They don't have anybody's interests at heart. Somebody throwing a Molotov cocktail, as far as I'm concerned, is de facto attempting murder, right? You hit somebody with gasoline, they're going to die. This is not a joke. You throw a brick into a crowd of people, you have attempted murder in my book, and we have to slam these people, take them down. And then we can solve the problems of racial injustice in America. But we can't solve racial injustice till we take these punk, chicken-chested white kids from the suburbs and take them down. Parents of America, do your jobs. Stop funding these punks living in these urban areas with their tattoos and their lattes. I'm tired of it.
Well, we didn't even play the Jack Maxey Show jingle there. Well, Greg, we really need you on the trigger on that one. That was, Steve's not here to have the rants. We gave the floor to Jack Maxey, knocked it out of the park there. My question is, we have known for a long time, I tweeted yesterday, that actually all this conservative, what they call the hyperbole over the last couple of decades is actually turning out to be completely true, right? I mean, we would talk about communistic elements, agitators, and the mainstream media would laugh it off. Oh, Red's under the bed, you're looking for communists. These guys are communists. They're not socialists. They're not democratic socialists. By the way, isn't it funny? The phrase democratic socialist seems to have suddenly disappeared. Yeah. It's in the UK, where you're having all these riots going on and protests too. Everything's operating under the Black Lives Matter banner. That includes legitimate protesters. It includes Antifa. It includes communists, all of it. And over here, you have Antifa, you have communists, and you have, anarchists. By the way, they're not really anarchists. They're anarchists in the sense that they want anarchy, but they're not anarchists in the sense that they believe in anarchism as a form of government. They believe in hyper-welfarism. They believe that their state, their version of the state, not the consent of the version of the state, should provide everything, cradle to grave. This is worse than Scandinavian socialism, by the way. This is full-blown Marxism. This is CCP level stuff that these guys are trying to deliver here in the United States today. So I don't want to hear a single word ever again that conservatives are hyperbolic when we warn about these things. If I hear Rachel Maddow saying it one more time, I'm going to take Slate's advice and go down to her studio and protest outside, right? Slate is telling people that violent protest is correct and Twitter won't take them down. Slate magazine, with offices here in Washington, D.C., offices in Brooklyn. What if somebody took their advice about violent protests and took that outside their offices? How would they like that? Sorry, you had a rant. I had to have a rant.
Hey, listen, it doesn't get any stupider than the Attorney General of Massachusetts yesterday, who said, think of these burnings and lootings like a forest fire. You have to burn a forest to keep it healthy. Are you kidding me? This is an elected official tasked with enforcing the law. Talking about burning our cities like making a forest healthy. Now, here's the great irony. These same leftists who want to burn the cities to make them healthy, they don't let us burn forests.
Mm-hmm. I don't think that the elected leadership in the Democratic Party, on average, actually believe any of this. When Raheem and I were walking through D.C. by the White House the day after the first bad riots, we would see a lot of, quote, capitalism equals murder. And I don't think that rank-and-file Democrats, who are largely funded by corporatists, really subscribe to that worldview. I think that this is actually a very small minority. But to your point about the Attorney General in Massachusetts, they have, out of fear, allowed their party and their own messaging to be hijacked. I think that they're truly afraid of a rebellion within the party. They don't have the balls to stand up to the marginal members of their own party.
Well, I think they are going to have a revolution inside their party.
Absolutely.
It's going to be similar to the revolution
Yes.
in 1980 and 1984,
Yes.
where responsible members of the Democratic Party turned their back on a failed system. And I want to make out one more point while I'm in my angry mode. As
Very
we're
quickly.
tearing down statues all around this country of racists, let's remember every single one that you're taking down was a Democrat, because their party was founded on racism.
Big points all here in the War Room right now. We're all fired up, and we want your comments. Hashtag War Room Pandemic on Twitter. Jack Maxey follows every single thing. Believe it or not, if you have a good point, it gets sent to every single person involved in the War Room show, to the production staff, right through to the big man, Stephen K. Bannon, who'll be back with us for the specials tomorrow. D-Day special and more as well about the new China project that he's working on, the illegitimacy of the Chinese Communist Party. But don't go anywhere. We're back for a final segment. I'm going to let Greg Manns have a rant in the final segment here. War Room Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
We always run out of time at the end of the show, so I wanted to thank all the production staff, including our in-house Dan, the producer, sitting in here for Vish, actually Vish's boss. So thanks, Dan, for accommodating us in your busy schedule, and all of the production team across Newsmax and America's Voice and GTV, the John Fredericks Radio Network and beyond, all of our partners out there as well, and to our sponsor, NetSuite by Oracle, the world's #1 cloud business system. Smart companies run on NetSuite because NetSuite gives you visibility and control over your financials, your HR, your inventory, your e-commerce, and more. Everything you need all in one place, whether you're doing $1 million or hundreds of millions in sales. NetSuite lets you manage every penny with precision. You have the agility with NetSuite to compete with anyone and work from anywhere. My favorite thing, especially on that Morton's Terrace. Run your whole company right from your phone. Join over 20,000 companies who trust NetSuite to make it happen for them. They surveyed hundreds of business leaders across the country and assembled a playbook of the top strategies they're using as America reopens for business. And what a day for it. Receive your free guide. It's called 7 Actions Businesses Need to Take Now, and schedule your free product tour at netsuite.com/Bannon. Get your free guide, schedule your free product tour right now. netsuite.com/Bannon. netsuite.com/Bannon. You're back in the War Room. Jack Maxey, Greg Manns, Harlan Hill. Harlan is the co-author with Ryan Godusky, another friend of this show, of They're Not Listening, How the Elites Created the Nationalist Populist Revolution. Holding it up here for our radio audience, our video audience. Now the radio audience is going to have to imagine the front cover, or go to, where can people get this? It's pre-order now?
It's pre-order until June 16th.
Okay.
It's Target, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, anywhere books are sold.
Anywhere books are sold. I like the mom and pop bookstores. Hey, Harlan agreed in the break that he and Ryan Godusky will actually sign a copy jointly, and we'll give it away to one of the War Room newsletter subscribers. So if you are on pandemic.warroom.org, go to the newsletter, sign up. I'll include everyone in the lucky dip, the draw that I do, not just for new sign-ups, but if you haven't signed up yet, go on there, make sure you're subscribed, and I'll do a random drawing out of that, and you'll receive a copy of Harlan's book, which, by the way, is much better than a copy of my last book, because this is a hardcover, so you can use this as a doorstop, anything you like. You know, my one is a paperback. You can't, it's toilet paper, but this real use here. Harlan, we thank you for joining us here. It's been a busy show, but there are so many more things we want to get to in the last 5 minutes here. Richard Dearlove, the former head of MI6, James Bond's boss, right? This is the top, one of the premier, I think, the best intelligence service in the world. The CIA might disagree, but MI6, the former head of MI6, saying what, Greg, in a recent interview with the Telegraph. Let's play the clip.
Which brings us to the conspiracy theory, I guess, that an engineered escapee, the virus, could not possibly have been engineered with a view to causing global turmoil, so China could benefit from it, could it?
No, I don't. Absolutely. Because, I mean, China itself has suffered hugely, and probably more than we realize, because they will have not published the true figures. I do think that this started as an accident. Okay, once it started, there are things about the Chinese behavior which are completely shocking, but there was nothing deliberate about the origins of it. I mean, the research into viruses, well, I won't go into the sort of motives for the research, but the medical motives are quite well understood. But it's a risky business if you make a mistake.
What is he saying there, Greg? That sounds to me like he's saying that he said it started as an accident. Not started in a wet market, started as an accident. He's talking about labs. I thought this was a conspiracy theory. The former head of MI6 is coming out now and saying, actually, hold on a minute. Maybe he started as an accident. And the motives behind the research, the gain of function.
Exactly. That's what I was going to point to. He doesn't say gain of function, but that's the point he's getting at.
We've heard that so many times, Jack. You started it here on the show.
Well, I mean, one of the things they claim in this study, which we have not actually read yet, I apologize, it seems it's a bit difficult to find, is that they actually inserted genes into the thing to make it more communicable. This is the whole idea behind gain of function. Dearlove says that likely it was created in the lab, got out of the lab, and he says some
read
amazing things. He said, sorry about that, peeps. I'm all over the place here.
We want to get it. Jack, you got all the time in the world. We want to get it exactly right.
He says, look at the stories of the attempts by the leadership to lock down any debate about the origins of the pandemic and the way that people have been arrested or silenced. I mean, we shouldn't really have any doubts any longer about what we're dealing with. Of course, the Chinese must have felt, well, if they've got to suffer a pandemic, maybe we shouldn't try too hard to stop it, as it were. Our competitors suffering the same disadvantages, we get it. Look, the Chinese understand us extremely well. They have made a study of us over the last decade or longer, particularly through attending our universities. We understand the Chinese very poorly. It's an imbalanced relationship in that respect. We need to go into reverse. It's important that we do not put any of our critical infrastructure in the hands of the Chinese interests. So telecommunications, Huawei, nuclear power stations, and then things that we require in a crisis, PPEs, medicines. We have allowed China so much rope that we are now suffering the consequences.
Why have I not seen this flash up on the nightly news?
Well, one of the things that he also relates is that the Chinese has tremendous influence in the scientific literary publications at this point. We have seen this over and over again. We have to question, why are these studies appearing in Lancet? Why are they appearing in JAMA? What are the objectives of falsified studies that oppose the president's lay opinion on a very benign drug? Who is behind this? Are the tentacles of the CCP here? I think it's highly possible. We know they control the chemistry department at Harvard. Why not the editorial board at Lancet? We need to wake up America to this threat. These people are amongst us, and we need to identify them. They're no different than the Antifa. This 1,000 Talents program in America is really just a giant attempt at espionage and an attempt to destroy our country and our way of life. We need to back the president 100% in shutting down the CCP.
Harlan Hill, where can people find more of your work?
I'm on Twitter at Harlan, or go to my website, harlanhill.com, Harlan.
And for whoever the cheeky chappy was in the YouTube live chat that said Raheem needs to buy some collar stays, this is my mother of pearl collar stay, okay, out of my German Street shirt. So I'm not having any of that. War Room Pandemic. We'll be back tomorrow with specials. D-Day and the new federal Chinese special with Stephen K. Bannon. I want to thank all the team here as well. Make sroom you're going to pandemic.warroom.org. Sign up for the newsletter. #WarRoomPandemic. See you tomorrow.